Anthony Stirpe is a 10th grade English teacher at New Rochelle High School in New Rochelle, New York. He finds technology useful as a teaching tool and also for classroom management routines, such as assigning students to work groups.
If you can't figure it out, that was me in my original classroom, and I'm talking about how I used the very first smartboard they installed in our school to teach.
A VCR with a tape that's set and is going to project certain things onto a screen. What I did was use a simple Palm Pilot, or PDA, and it has the ability to beam the information from the Palm Pilot to the computer.
So I have taught for the last 18 years at one of the largest and most diverse public high schools in the tri-state area. And for the last 18 years, I've been a general ed English teacher in a pretty traditional English department. In fact, if you had walked by my class before my video storytelling program, you would have seen row after row of 9th graders. I was obsessed with rows. I was obsessed with order. I hated group work. I thought it was stupid and loud and pointless. And I would do it because I had to do it. I went as far as numbering every desk in my room. And to prove that I was unbiased in how I selected my students, I would have this deck of cards, and I would call on them by number. I wouldn't even use their names. I was obsessed with formulas. I had a formula for everything. And my administration loved it. I look back now and I recognize that technology wasn't something that I used, technology was something I used to make my life easier. It wasn't something that I was using to make the students' lives easier. Like I said, my administration, they really celebrated what I was doing. They loved the order and the regimen of my classroom. And they would have me lead PD sessions. I would walk around the building and I would see other teachers with their desks numbered, and I would feel so proud. And at the time, we thought we were transforming education, but what we were really doing was we were limiting the way people taught, and I was helping with that. So I look back and I now realize that at that time in my life, I was really concerned with my success as a teacher. I wasn't concerned with my students' success. And all the things that I was doing and all the places I was taking my coworkers, it was really coming from a place where I was like, I want to be a successful teacher. So this transition happened about 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. I started what is called now the Poem Project. And I got the idea to do video storytelling through film. I was going to take famous poetry, and I was going to explore it through video storytelling. And I did it for all the wrong reasons. At the time, I was teaching 9th grade, and I hated 9th graders. And so I thought, if I could get 9th graders to make original films based around poetry, they would take me out of teaching 9th grade. So I went to my administration and I pitched the idea, and they were like, cameras are really expensive. And so I'm sitting there and I think to myself, iPads, we will use iPads and iOS devices. I didn't even know if it was possible. I just didn't want to teach 9th grade. I just hated it that much. And so this changed everything. They were like, iPads, can that happen? I didn't know. I was just like, oh yeah, absolutely. I can make it work, yeah. And so they agreed. There was a catch. They wanted me to create it as an alternative program for 9th graders. So I used to have a principle that would say, you wanted a dog, we bought you a dog, now walk the dog. And this was really my walk the dog moment. So I agreed. And they told me to go out and pack up my classroom and to get ready to create this video storytelling program. So I went to my room and I started packing, and that moment would become really transformative for me. As I was packing my classroom, I noticed this. I look close. That is the floor of my classroom, and it's worn and discolored because the smartboard made sure that I never moved from that spot. I was now chained to a giant touchscreen in the front of my classroom. So I started my school year with 5 iPads in a new classroom and with 28 students. And I had to teach all the same techniques that other students were learning in their classrooms, but I had to use this video storytelling to make it work. That spot in my classroom really stuck with me, and it bothered me. I think it was because it was the first time that I really ever recognized how much I had been limiting myself as a teacher. But even more important than that, it made me recognize how much I had limited my students. So I made a commitment right there and then that I was going to change the experience for the students. And it was successful, it was working. With 5 iPads, I could not, I had to rely on group work. I could not put the students into rows. And I had to be creative, creating experiences for my students where they had to rely on collaboration to achieve. So the iPad really allowed me to sort of break the chains that tied me to this traditional way of thinking and teaching, and it allowed me to turn every space into an opportunity for learning. So if you look here, here we are in my classroom, but here we are in the hallway, here we are in a storage closet, here we are outside, here we are inside, here we are in the bathroom. We were now finding ourselves in these really sort of strange places, but more important, I was finding myself in a strange place. I had been moved off my spot from this experience. And now I was in a place where all my students were successful and where they were achieving because I was meeting them where they were. Now what's happened, sometimes people walk by my classroom and they'll comment on my film program, and I have to remind them that what they're looking at is an English class, 9th grade, by the way. Now, it's amazing, as you move off your spot, it's amazing how much you recognize that other people are on spots of their own personal making, and you begin to see it. Like I said, when I was on this spot, my administration celebrated me. But as I moved off, people began to say really interesting things. So here are some of the things you notice as you're moved off your spot, right? So the first thing is, people begin to complain that you're loud. So everyone began to complain about how loud my classroom was. And they moved my class again. In fact, they moved me to the extreme corner of the building, and they put me by the soundcraft-proof band and choral rooms, right? And I was taught, like, learning is loud. When the kids are learning, it is loud. Also, people don't know necessarily how to assess that. So I had the experience where I had just, my boss, who was since retired, had come in to observe, and she was observing my class, and I get to the end, and I walk over to her, and she looks at me with this blank look and goes, I don't even know how to write that up. I was like, oh my gosh, was it that bad? And she was Anthony. It was amazing. So what I realized in that moment is, here she was, and she was on a spot, and because I had moved off of hers, if she was going to observe this, she would have to do the same. She would have to move off her spot to sort of meet us where we were. This is what the lesson was. She walked into the classroom. I basically said, go. There was no fancy planning for this. This is the same thing that we do every year at this point in my class. And so the kids were dealing with a piece of content, and they decided, they got up and they walked out of the classroom. So all of a sudden, all of the kids walked out of the classroom, and they went to different areas of the building, and they were deep diving with literature, with content, in the different areas of the building, with technology. And we went from group to group to group to observe them. That's all we did. We walked around and we watched the kids working. And then they came back, they were all back to the class with like 2 minutes to go. We had a couple of minutes of reflection, and they walked out. And here she was with her Danielson rubric. Like, how do I fill this out? Right? I had shown her a particular spot that she was on, and if she was going to observe it, right, she was going to have to move. Let me show you one of the earliest pieces of curriculum that I developed as part of my video storytelling program. It's really simple. I think it's something that anyone in this room could do with their students. So, like I said, in my class we use poetry. So the kids create original content all around poetry. And one of the earliest things that I have them do is I have them take a poem and record it. But it doesn't have to be a poem, it could be any content. I have a friend who's an elementary school teacher. She has the kids do it with things like emotion and the weather. And all they have to do is record, and the goal is to convey comprehension. That's it. Film yourself and convey comprehension. So, they have to keep recording and recording until enough students in the class believe that they understand the words that are coming out of their mouth. That's it. It's that simple. So, one of the early things that we did, like I said, we did a lesson on sonnets. This was a couple years ago. And my students took Shakespeare. Some students find that challenging. I don't think Shakespeare is as challenging as they think it is. And here are my students performing My Mistress's Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun.
My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun.
Coral is far more red than her lips are.
If snow be white, why then her breasts are done?
Its hairs be wires, black wires growing her head.
I've seen roses damask red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks.
And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that my mistress speaks?
I love to hear her speak, yet, well, I know, music hath far more pleasing sound.
I grant, I never see a goddess go.
My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground.
And yet, by heaven,
I think my love is rare.
As she belie with false compare.
So, I show hands, all right? Raise your hand if you think you saw at least 2 or more students understanding the words that they were saying in that poem. By show of hands, raise your hand. Okay, so lots of people saw at least 2 or more students who were demonstrating an understanding of the poem. Raise your hand if you think that that was the very first take, that those were all their first takes. Now, I want you to think about this. If I had done it the way that I did when I was obsessed with rows, put them in rows, gave them a worksheet, gone line by line through that sonnet with a worksheet, could I have gotten them to dive into the content like that? And they didn't just dive into it there. Once they were done filming, that's about two days of recording, then we do a self-reflection, self-assessment day, and then they go back in usually for 1 day of recording, sometimes 2. And so they went in again and again and again. And then on top of that, then they have to edit it. So now they're experiencing the poem through the editing process, and they're going through, and they're once again engaging with that content. Where if I gave them the same worksheet 4 times and was like, fill this out 4 times, they would not have that same sort of experience as this simple act of like recording for comprehension. And then here's my boss, and she's trying to figure out how to grade something like that. With this, each student had to record him or herself performing the poem. And then what happens is students could not submit a recording until they demonstrated an understanding of each word said. But today's talk is about moving off your spot. And my expectations was no different for my students. I wanted my students to challenge the way that they were learning. So there was a twist for them as well. So like I said, with this assignment, each student had to record until they demonstrated comprehension. But here is the twist. Not a single video that you saw was graded. I did not grade one of those videos. Instead, what I did is I teamed up my students in teams of 3, and I graded the peers on how well they brought their partners to a final performance. So I didn't grade their final performance. I graded the people who were helping them get there. And it didn't have to be an earth-shattering performance. We went through layers of self-assessment and self-reflection, and like I said, it didn't have to be earth-shattering. As long as those students brought their classmates to the best possible performance, then they would get graded on that. They would get graded on that process. And it was transforming the way that my students were working, right? The conversations that we were having in my class were so much more significant than the conversations we were having when I had them in rows. We were talking about things like mentorship and comprehension and intent. And here I am having these discussions with ninth graders. And there were so many realizations that the kids would have through this process. I thought it was really interesting to see the kids recognize that even though they say something out loud, it doesn't mean that they're conveying the intent. Like to be sitting with ninth graders who are having this realization like, oh, you don't understand when I say that. You're right, and neither do your classmates. So where are we trying to go with this? What are you trying to say? Kids are also much more vulnerable. I found that students, not your traditional asking questionnaires to help. Kids were much more willing to admit when they didn't know something to me and to peers. So even with this particular example that you saw here, what would happen is I would have students, and this actually happened, I walked over to a group and I said, your classmates don't feel like you understand what the word mask means. And the girl looked at me and she was like, you're right. And all of a sudden, where that would be a point where I would normally be teaching her that word, she was off. And I'm hearing these kids have this conversation about the word mask. Like, what's the origin of this? What's the etymology? I'm like, what is going on? Like, how is this happening? But what was happening was the pressure was off. And students were more concerned now with delivering for their classmates. We spend so much time grading that final project that when I flipped it and I had them focus on the process, and I was like, I'm going to grade you on that process, that it was transforming their experience. And now, again, here comes my boss to observe me. And I'm asking her to look at the process when she's going from classroom after classroom after classroom, and the focus is on this content. And I'm like, watch how the kids are working in this environment. The content just watch, the content will come. And so it was a very different experience for her and a very different experience for me. And so she was left with the question of how you would assess it. With this particular assignment, the students use Clips. I like Clips. It's a free app. I like it just because if you bring video into your classroom, it allows you to focus on the content and not the technical side of things. So kids get so hung up on like, I gotta get the music perfect, and it adjusts. So I like that. It takes that off the table. But then we would prepare keynote presentations where they would explore all these different things like literary elements, writing style, about the author, popular interpretations. And then what we would do is we would take those presentations and we would send them out around our school. So now the kids were going to their classrooms and they were seeing their work being used by another teacher. And that was very cool for them. And I also was able to customize the experience with them. So I assigned students jobs that were catered to their strengths, so director, writer, so that they could feel a little bit of ownership and they could feel successful. Now, here's something else that I realized through this process as I moved off my spot. This is about the time when people begin to question my grades. So I would have coworkers angrily walk into my room, and they would be like, there's no way this child is passing their class. And it would be someone who had a reluctant learner later on in the day, and they weren't doing well, and then the parents, of course, would say, well, in Mr. Stirpe's class. And so they would come down, and I would pull out the work, and we would look at it, and they're like, that student is passing your class. And I'm like, yeah, they're passing my class. And I began to realize that these are people who are stuck on their spots, and they have their own formulas for things. And as the students weren't able to deliver to those formulas, instead of questioning that formula, they thought it was that the student couldn't learn. This is a great time to talk about one of my students, Delano. So, Delano is I had him since a freshman year. He went through my program. He fell in love with filmmaking. He fell in love with video storytelling. Delano also got a little bit of the acting bug, so he was in our production of The Crucible last year. And Delano, he didn't learn in traditional environments. So Delano was the type of kid who liked project-based learning. He really liked collaboration. He liked weird, strange environments, right? And so I was out with Delano's English teacher one night. We were celebrating that English teacher's birthday. And we're having a few drinks. And of course, our conversation switched to school, because that's what happens when teachers get together. And the teacher looks at me and goes, "God, that's Delano. That kid just can't learn. He bombed his last test." And I was like, "Oh, wow, it's awful." And so we dug a little deeper, because again, I knew Delano didn't learn in those traditional environments. And I said, what was the test on? And he said, it was the Crucible. So Delano knows the Crucible. The reason why I know that Delano knows the Crucible is because our production that year was the Crucible. And Delano was John Proctor's understudy in the Crucible. I saw Delano perform the entire play as John Proctor. Delano knew the Crucible. And so I tried to express this to my coworker, and I was like, I think you might want to look and see if there's a different way that we could assess Delano. And I realized that in that moment, here was my coworker on his spot, and him and Delano, they couldn't find each other, right? And again, in that moment, it wasn't that his formula might have been off and that there was a way to find Delano and meet him where he was. It was that Delano couldn't learn. So I got him to agree. Okay, we're going to give Delano a different assessment and see what's going on. And so we sat down. We looked at the test. It was a pretty fair test. And a lot of students wouldn't have been successful on it. But he agreed that we would do some sort of video assignment for Delano. So he sat Delano down. He said, "You have 3 weeks." He gave him the assignment, and Delano went off, and Delano created the most brilliant film you can imagine. That just blew away the expectations. Now, this is the point where I would show you that film. The film is filled with curse word after curse word after curse word after curse word. And it's not the way that you think the film is. Delano wrote this story about a girl who had 2 friends who turned out to be voices in her head. And these friends talk to this girl in the most horrible way possible and say the most horrible things about the girl and about herself. And when you think about that story and Delano's experience, it sort of makes sense, because this is how Delano feels, right? He met every expectation. He included literary devices. He explored all the themes that the teacher wanted to explore. He also wrote it. He filmed it. He directed it. He edited it. And another thing that he did that I found really interesting is he took 3 girls who were in our school, 1 who was an actress in our school, but 2 who had never really done anything, and he directed them through the most brilliant performances. Now, I do have, of course, it's a tech conference, I didn't look for my computer. I do have a QR code where once you have your headphones on, if you would like to watch Delano's movie, you may watch Delano's movie, with the permission, of course, of Delano and his mother and all those things. But it really is a brilliant film, and it just kind of went, it showed me how when we move to meet our students where they are, right? That how successful they can be. And I still have Delano. Delano's a senior this year, and he is a different student now because of that experience, and everybody sees it. Everybody sees it. The teacher actually came to me and went, Delano passed because of you. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, that film. And I said, oh, so Delano passed because of Delano. He's like, that just don't help. So this is his film here. Now, I do want to show you one of the films that my students created. Because I feel like let's see something. If we move to the tech side of things, let's see something. And I sweat a lot over this one. So I'm putting together this for you, and I'm like, what film can I show them? And I think the best one is the film that goes with my mistress's eyes. So the way that my program works is this. Every year we take poems. This year we were doing sonnets. We were here. And then what the kids do is each person in that group writes a script about that poem. So every kid that you saw in that My Mistress's Eyes clip, they all wrote a script. Then those kids get together and they peer edit, They edit their scripts. They go through process of it, through sort of peer edit after peer edit. They get down to their best possible scripts, and then we pick one script and we make that one script. Well, here was the problem with My Mistress's Eyes. We did My Mistress's Eyes in 2016. And of course, the kids decided to take it to the election. And I was like, you cannot get up there and show people a movie. My mama taught me one thing, which is you don't talk politics with people, right? And I was like, so now I'm sweating. I'm like, yeah, that's the best video to show. I'm like, you can't show this video to people. And I realized, I stopped, I'm like, the whole point is to talk about moving off your spot. And I'm like, you just found a spot, right? The kids would want people to see this particular movie because that's why they made it. They made this movie to be seen and to share what their experience was. So the movie was written by Skylar Edwards, who was the very first girl that appeared in that video. And I will tell you this, for those of you who think they go one way or the other, if you have a political belief, these kids are coming after it. Like, they come after everything. So this ain't the left, this ain't the right. They're savage, as the kids would say. They are savage. They're coming for you. And why I think it's interesting is because here's one of the most significant points in the last sort of decade, this election that has, wherever you are, it's given people's feelings. And these students took a Shakespearean sonnet and processed all of their emotions and all of their experiences through a Shakespearean sonnet. So this is what I'm going to let you see this video written by Skylar. And then we'll meet on the other side. And they were very excited. I told them I was going to show them. She was like, you're going to show my movie? She was very excited. And so I give you the movie that was inspired by My Mistress's Eyes, and it's called The Perfect Candidate.
Whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Amanda Peterson, and for my political science project, I will be interviewing Marty Ingram and Michelle Watson. Marty is a right-wing ultra-conservative who will be voting for Daniel Crum's election, and Michelle is a left-wing ultra-liberal who will be voting for Millie Clark. Both are under the impression that their candidate is the perfect candidate for a class president. And cut. How was that?
Amanda?
Yeah, Alex?
Just letting you know, Michelle is out there yelling at someone with a pro-life sticker on their locker. And Marty's wearing a hat that says Make America Great Again, and he has a Confederate flag.
And this project better get me an A and a college recommendation. Bring Michelle in, please.
Millie Clark is the most honest, kind, and qualified woman in the school. She is all about the people and never herself. It's time for a change in the classroom. Vote Millie today. Paid for by Millie's parents.
So just put it on your collar of the shirt. Yeah, just like that. Perfect. Great. So, tell me, when did you first realize
I'm sorry, I don't think her mic's on. Sorry, Michelle, could you stand up for a second so I could adjust your mic?
Why should I stand for a country that doesn't stand for me?
You do realize that that's an expression mainly said by people of color, which you're not.
Black Lives Matter. You know, Millie supports all black people. She loves black people.
Can we just stick to the interview, please?
Okay.
Okay, so you were quoted before saying that you support Millie because the worst woman is still better than the best man. Besides from the fact that Daniel's a man, what do you dislike about him?
Daniel's just so, we're not going to talk about him because he's disgusting. But Millie, she's kind, she's loving, she's smart, she's a woman. She's the perfect candidate, really.
What about the Snapchat incident?
What?
Or that time she was caught pushing a freshman into the lake? All of Millie's incidents. What are your opinions on those?
Opinion? I don't have an opinion because that didn't happen. She never did that. She never pushed anyone into the lake. And this is ridiculous. I came here for an interview, not to be attacked. Goodbye. See? I never said I supported him.
And she's gone.
That was fast.
That was not what I was expecting.
It's hard enough to fit in here as a kid. The last thing we need are people who don't even live in this town. Build a wall for the students who don't belong. Paid for by the grandparents, aunts, and uncles of Daniel Crumb.
Is that a Confederate flag?
Sure is.
You, Mike?
Yeah.
Mike?
Sorry, Ken.
Hey, babe.
Nah, I'm in an interview right now. The swear who's doing it is smoking. No, of course not. Out of the mood. Anyways, love your pumpkin. Bye. Sorry, that was my sister.
Sister?
Yeah, my sister.
Okay. But when did you first realize you'd be voting for Daniel?
Well, Daniel tells it like it is. As soon as he said he wants to get rid of poor students, I knew I'd be voting for him. My parents are taxpayers.
What about all the rich kids who are here illegally because of our science science
Those
program?
kids can stay. They're actually helping to better our school environment.
What are your opinion on women and gay rights?
It's simple. Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. But I'm not homophobic. I've got 2 gay friends and I try to hook them up all the time, you know, because they're gay. I'm straight though, so I mean.
What about the woman for class president?
What? No, she'll ruin everything. I wouldn't even expect you to understand. You're a woman too. Right, pal?
Okay, I understand more than you think I do.
Turn it around.
And you know what? Your candidate has done so many controversial things. You know, like dating that girl and then breaking up with her when he found out she was a Muslim.
There is no controversy. Daniel is the perfect candidate. You know, you liberals are too busy killing babies and going vegan to understand that the media, they're lying to you. Just like they lie about global warming. You know, this entire interview, it's fake news. I'm done.
I'm not surprised he's leaving. I can't believe these people. I'm never gonna get this project done.
No, it'll take some editing magic and a solid closing scene, but we'll be all right. What did you think of Michelle and Marty?
I thought they were delusional.
Why is that?
Either one of them would be crazy to think their candidate is the perfect candidate. They're both deeply flawed, and I think people need to realize this.
If both candidates are deeply flawed, how can anyone support either of them?
There's no such thing as the perfect candidate. It's up to the individuals to realize who is the lesser of 2 evils, and then, only then will they be true supporters of their candidate.
And there's our closing statement. Amanda, if you don't mind me asking, who did you support?
It doesn't matter. What matters is that I can recognize the bad in my candidate, and I can still support them through anything.
Is that so? Because I specifically remember a certain someone saying, what was it? No student government is the best form of government. Our society is corrupt and we need to abolish formalized government before it's too late.
Shut up. It's truly wrong.
Daniel is not your mob candidate. Spending money on girls and publicly harassing students. While you pay, he plays. Don't let Daniel take your money.
I'm Millie Clark, and I approve this message.
How many more Snapchats does Millie need to send in order for us to get the message? She says she's trustworthy, but tell that to her streets.
I'm Daniel Crumb, and I approve this message.
So that entire movie, something I can remind myself is, was written by 9th graders. That was written by 9th graders. And again, they took that poem and what was happening in our world, and they brought it together in this experience. And each kid wrote a movie. There were 5 different movies. This is the one that this particular group wanted to make. And they're really passionate about it. I will tell you, this was not their first version. Their first version, there were things in there, I was like, you cannot say those things. There is stuff in this film where I even get I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sweating. But to sit there with the kids and they're justifying to me through the poem. Well, in the poem, he does say, to see that and have these discussions with them where now they're using this poem to justify the decisions that they're making. It was really an interesting experience. It is every year, because every year we produce movies that are inspired by the poems. So, in true teacher fashion, let's see if there's any brave volunteers. So you just saw the students created this film, The Perfect Candidate. Is there anyone who's brave enough to say how they saw an understanding of the poem, My Mistress's Eyes, in that particular video? You there!
Yes, I saw the correlation between Shakespeare's humor and the filmmaker's humor. Now, purpose is really a fun concept, and that's what I'm
Excellent, good, very good, yes. Because in the poem he's talking about how his girl is perfect, even though everybody else is saying all of these things about her. Anyone else see any connections in there? Any other brave souls? Thank you, brave souls. So, here are some of the ways that I graded them. You know, these are Common Core standards, determining a theme, meaning of words, comprehending stories, dramas, poems. You saw that, yes, we're exploring poetry, but then they're also writing, and they have to understand drama to be able to then create their scripts, develop the topic, and use technology to produce and publish. Are there any other areas, if we had to fill in these last two areas, what are some other areas that we could grade those students on with that particular project? So you saw that project. What's two more categories that I could put in there? Maybe you have the Common Core memorized, or maybe there's other categories you'd like to talk about in terms of, let's grade them on this. Yes. So absolutely, and that's built into the Common Core, correct? Like how well they're able to work as a team and manage a project. So we can go into that, and we can look at that. Anything else? Thank you. Yes. Sure. So even the public speaking element of it, we could bring that in. So it doesn't just have to be these English Common Core standards that we're looking at. We can then go into all these other areas that they ask us to produce through the process. You know, we're very concerned a lot of times with having students move to us, move to tests, move to rubrics, and really move to the demands of a system that's sort of stuck on a spot. You know, when we think about our education system, there's some areas where we're stuck on spots. And, you know, we're here today. A lot of us are the risk takers and the people who are moved off our spots in our district. And we may work in systems where those systems are really stuck on those spots. And we can only begin to transform if we identify the spots where we're stuck and where we're comfortable. And we move to create scenarios where students are able to shine because they're in an environment that's allowing them to bring the best of themselves. If you're wondering, the kids who starred in that movie, those are juniors, and the freshmen write the movies, and part of the hitch in another twist in the program is when you get to junior year, you come back, and you star in the movies that the freshmen wrote. So those students all went through the program. They were freshmen once who wrote films and then made those films, and the juniors who went through the program before then came back to star in those films. So it becomes this nice little cycle, and you have, so if you're wondering why they were older than freshmen, it's because they are. But those are freshmen directing them. And that's always an interesting experience. And again, we're creating scenarios where everyone has these different jobs, and they're able to bring the best of themselves, and so the students are really thriving and shining. So, before we move into a little bit more technology side, some fun stuff, I want you to do something for me. I'm going to give you all 2 minutes and 48 seconds. And I would like you to just think of a spot that you might be stuck on, or a spot even that maybe you've already moved off of. And I would love for you to turn to someone near you and talk to them about an area where you think you're stuck or where you think you've moved in your career. And share that with someone who's around you. Now, if you don't know someone who's around you, all you have to do is say, hello, my name is. And then you two can share, and then you make a lifelong friendship. 2 minutes and 48 seconds just to talk to someone who's near you about what is your spot. Ready, set, go! I'm going to give you a little piece of swag. It's emotional swag to take back with you. Here's your and this works in your class. Your children will love this. Okay, everybody, take your hands and put them over your head. Now, as you come down, I want you to snap. So, okay, so we're going to do it again. And this time, as your hands come down, please repeat the word deep. Ready, set, go. Deep, 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 deep. Whenever anyone does anything deep in your classroom, I'm telling you, too bad your children will love you. We'll be talking, and all of a sudden they'll be like, deep, 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 deep. See, because there's probably so many deep, deep, deep things that we just shared. Maybe there's people saying, yeah, it's for lunch. But how can you share somewhere where you thought you got off this spot? We're here today for technology, and so I wanted to start with that first part with just sort of my journey, because again, I was so traditional it wasn't funny. Like, it was rows and numbered desks and worksheets and formulas. And so where I am now, and it's only been like 6, 7 years, like I never imagined this journey. It never even occurred to me. Obviously, we're here for technology, and that's one of the forces that has been most instrumental in pushing people off their spots. Think about this. Once upon a time, we lived in a world where the light switch was something that did not exist. And there was a generation of people who were uncomfortable with the light switch. It's true. There were some curmudgeons out there who were like, you're not taking away my candles. I love my candles. I'm not using that stupid light switch. And there were people that had to move off the spot. Now, if you don't believe me on that, if you're like, that's impossible, Anthony, I want to just point out to you that right now, we are living in a generation that is actually replacing the light switch. And all of you know you are either annoyed by or you annoy someone by going, Siri, turn off my light. Can I say Alexa? Alexa! Am I going to get fired for this? Apple coming for me. Siri, turn off my lights. And you know there's someone like, can't you just get up and go over and turn off the light yourself? Like, we are living in a world that is actually replacing the light switch right now. We're living through that, right? And there are people who are uncomfortable and can't necessarily deal with that yet because they like their light switches. I just want to give you an idea of what the world looks like for our students. So this is what the world looks like for our students. So I did not update for 2020. Whoops. So their ages. So this is about where some of your students are right now, 5, 11, 14, 18, 25. So if they're in primary school, if they're about 5 right now, born in 2015, you can see born in 2014 there. Middle school, born in 2008, they're about 11 right now. High school, born around 2005, they're 14. University, 2001, born 18. And in 1994, they're about 25 right now, they were born in 94. So this is where people are. I want you to think about this and sort of our experience and the student experience of today. There is not a single student alive. Siri, be quiet. See, they are. So there's not a single student alive who has lived without a web browser, right? None of our students have lived without a web browser. I used to go down into my basement to my Funk and Wagnall dictionaries and encyclopedias and like copy everything from there, changing the appropriate words with a thesaurus so that hopefully my teacher would not catch me, right? All of these children, they all grew up with an internet browser. They don't know what a world is like without an internet browser. None of our high school students remember a world without social media, right? Our university students might remember it a little bit, but none of our high schools, they're all tic-tacking and snap-clapping and doing the things that, now I used to have to wait for my Tiger Beat magazine to arrive in the mail to find out what social media was. Like, I'd have to like flip through and hopefully, like, my mom don't catch me reading Tiger Beat. A whole other story, a whole other keynote. But they all live in a world of social media. All of them. They don't know what it's like. And you might have some high schoolers who remember a world without a cell phone, or an iPhone specifically, there is not a single middle school or elementary school student who remembers what a world was like without an iPhone. Every single one of them has lived in a world where that technology has existed. And meanwhile, I have the memories of going all the way across the house and into the closet, again, no pun intended, with my cord, like hiding from my mom, with the, like, I hope she doesn't know where I am, and meanwhile there's a cord stretched from one room to the other. Every one of these kids knows what the world looks like with an iPhone in it. Again, some of your high school students might remember what it was like before, but none of your elementary and middle schools remember it. And there's not a single one of those kids in elementary and middle school who remember what a world was like without apps. They have always lived with an app for everything. That's them. That their experience. And here's the greater experience. We're going to have a whole generation of people. Dick Tracy's watch was like, that was something that was comic book fodder once upon a time. Right? We would, like, I remember watching Get Smart. I know. And he would be talking to his watch. All of these kids actually have that. They live in a world where their face is going to open everything. And that's where they live. But that's not always our experience. I want to show you what our experience looks like when it runs into their experience with this. Because this is them, but let me show you what it looks like when our two worlds collide.
What's your number? I asked you a question.
No.
4. What?
I know. I thought you had to spin it around.
What's your number?
Oh, I think I know what it is.
What's your number?
Hang on. I got it. I got it. I know how to do it. I know how to do it. Move. I know how to do it. I got it.
Well, if I did that, I just called mom.
Hang on.
Sure, bro.
Do I have to let it go back every time?
So, we are living in a world of amazing technology, but the fact is, we are dragging our students to embrace rotary phones, and we are wondering why only some of them understand how to dial that number right. Right? That's what we're asking them to do. And we're asking them to embrace sort of our understanding of the world. That wasn't their understanding. In fact, two things have been around since the 1970s, right? One of them is that rotary phone. Here's the other one that's been around since 1970, right? We live in this world where we were smart enough to get rid of one of these things. But the other thing, for some unknown reason, we've kept it around. We're all obsessed with our Scantron sheets and running them through that machine. It can be gratifying when it's great that quickly, but we're just like running them through the machines, and we're not letting go of them. And here are these two worlds where there's this world of technology. Now you all know, I know there's no one here, you have a coworker who got their cart of Chromebooks, just a little joke there, and iPads, and instead of using them in a way that will transform the student experience, they've just replaced books and papers and going to the library and printing. That's all they've done with them. They've done nothing to sort of push how they're using that technology, and even how we can transform that student experience and that assessment experience especially. I find that as I go through my journey, and again, for me, the whole experience, I was traditional. I loved those Scantron sheets. I loved them, running them through that machine and finding test software online that would grade it for them automatically. The hardest part has been changing how I assess kids. That's been the absolute hardest, and I find that for a lot of people, that's the hardest spot to get off. Like, how do we change that assessment model. And as you go through these next few days, you may look at different vendors and get your stance, but also the different opportunities of how can we change the way that we are assessing our students, because that's ultimately the question that we have to answer. I think that's why our system gets so stuck on the spot, because where some of us are willing to have those experiments, those moments where we experiment, the system wants those test scores, right? Some of us have sat through those development sessions where it's data, and we're seeing numbers, just like when I used to number my vests, right? And the thing to think about is if our bosses walked in and handed us a test, we would be on the phone with the union president so fast, it's not even funny. We would be like, do you know what he or she just, they walked in and they handed me a test in a Scantron sheet, and they were like, fill it out, and that is how I'm going to grade you as a teacher. I know. Where was my pre-assessment? Where was my lesson? Where is my post-observation meeting? Right? Yeah, we do that to our kids. We do that to our students, and why? I ask that question when I work with people, and they're like, because that's how it was done when we were growing up. Right. And we're stuck in a system that likes to do it the way they did it when we were growing up. But the system has changed, right? We got rid of those rotary phones. We love those Scantron sheets. One of the things that I switched to, and this was hard. This was like one of the hardest switches to do, but it's so worth it. I switched to a single point rubric, which now when I'm grading my students, I only tell them what to do to get an 80. That's it. So right down the middle there, I go, this is how you get an 80. Go, my child, get an 80. And then I put them in groups, and I ask them to brainstorm. What are the ways you could go above and beyond what I put here? Because I realized when I was doing those 4-column rubrics, it was no different than a test. They would look at that last column, that's the only one some of them would read. They'd be like, okay, got it, right? And they would just do that. And I was limiting them just again. I was giving them a big spot to stand on, and boy, they would run there and they would stand on there because they wanted that grade. And so now I just give them an 80, and I say, come up with some ideas of how you think you can go above and beyond. And there's the kids that do, and there's the kids that don't. I brought this idea of self-assessment and I brought reflection into the classroom. So we revisit this rubric. I'll give it at the beginning of a project. Sometimes we'll build it together, and then we'll go through. And as we go through, I'll bring it back again and again until they get to the end. And then what I do is I give them suggestions, and I give them celebrations, and I try to get them all where they're moving towards celebrations. I like using numbers. I've got a bunch of rubrics now in numbers with the drop-down menus. So I build a lot of rubrics with drop-down menus because we know the comments that come up again and again and again. And I program some of my rubrics with them so that I can give them some feedback right there on the spot. And I also have the kids check in, and I go, like, look, here's what you do to get an 80. Where do you feel like you're doing? What's the one thing you feel like you're doing really well? And what's the one area where you feel like you're not doing well? And then I even pair the groups and team them up so that there's a kid whose strength matches another student's weakness. And it's allowed me to be really creative in how I assess my students and in transforming that experience for them. My principal gave me a look because I was like, can I throw out grades? And he was like, we're not having that discussion yet. He was like, go to the top. Come back. Assessment. I want to show you. So my students sat down and surprised them. They didn't know they were doing this. And I said, just let me know what you think about when you think of assessment. Because again, I think when we're talking about being on a spot, this is one of the areas where we can get the most stuck, and it's the hardest to change. Right? And so here's what my students said.
I think that when teachers involve you in the grading process, I think that that's a huge advantage for you.
Really enjoyed and found it helpful to have evaluations and then be able to improve upon my work later on.
I like giving a rough first assignment to my teacher and then getting feedback from them and having the chance to redo it.
Teachers maybe could set up personal talks.
And they put the constructive criticism in the draft without attaching the the criticism with the grade. I think that's more helpful. Once I see a grade on something, it automatically determines whether I like my work or whether I don't like my work.
The teacher can sit down and just talk about what they can, what the student can do to improve.
You know exactly what you're aiming for and what certain targets and points you should reach, and I think that that's very important, and I feel like a lot of teachers should do that.
Well, here comes the Shakes Club. Smartest thing said all day, and it's said by one of my students. We did this video at the beginning of the year, and when she said this, I felt the air go out of the room because I was like, oh my gosh, you are so right. Once I see a grade on something, it automatically determines whether I like my work or whether I don't like my work. That is the power that we have as teachers. That is a power. That's like a superpower, right? And we think back even about that story about Delano. Like, we are helping kids determine whether they like their work or whether they don't like their work. And if we're really going to make them feel successful and feel like they can achieve, we gotta do that thing where when it's not going the way we think, right? Don't judge by our formula. We gotta move off our spot a little bit to see if we can meet a student where he or she is and maybe find a way where they can feel successful. Because this is the, again, I think it's the spot we have to get off the most, right? We have to move so that we are not helping students determine the way that they feel about their work and then reinforcing sort of that negative view of their work and what's possible. Because, yeah. So I'm going to leave this. She's sort of, I like leaving her there. Woo! My microphone's off, so that's probably a sign. Or like, wrap it up. Okay, so like I said, when I started this whole journey, I'm about to do some shame stuff. Okay. Resource document. So all the things that you saw today, I put them in a document for you, and all the video links are there. But additionally, I put a whole bunch of assessment stuff. So there's a whole bunch of videos. I have a video about students, what they say their least favorite assessments are. I have, that's the Shameless Club. I have their least favorite assessment. I have about single point rubrics. Some examples. There's even one that you can download. I have the videos that you saw today by my students. I have everything. It's all there. It's 4 pages of wonderful documents. It makes you open it in. See, I told you, not just Apple, George. When I started this journey, like if someone would have said, like, one day you're going to be on the Apple Distinguished Educator, I was like, what? Like, no, I never planned that. Like, it was a shock to me that one day that I would end up there, but it's just because I moved off my spot. Like, the power that it has, like, again, when I started off, I was really worried about my success. There's not a moment, and we were even talking over here, there's not a moment where I think about my students and their success all day long. That's what I concern myself with now. And that's a spot that I moved off of. And I'm like, if someone walks in and says that I am a crappy teacher, go for it. Have a good time. But I've switched myself to caring really about their success and them reaching reaching their best. And so it's taking me on a whole bunch of wild adventures. One of the most wild things that happened is when they did launch the Everyone Can Create curriculum, they highlighted 4 teachers, and we actually had events in Chicago, and the greatest experience that I've had was presenting my students' work. Like sharing my students' work with you, that's so important because it's for them to know that we're out there and their work is being shared with you. You know, that's transforming their experience in the classroom. This year, I got this video. So, on social media. And I get this call, and they're like, we want you to come to Baku, Azerbaijan. Now, when I first got that, I was like, I think an African prince wants my bank account number. I'm not sure. And then when I was done with that, I was like, I think I'm going to need Liam Neeson to like swoop in and rescue me. Because I think someone might be trying to kidnap me. But it was true. Like I had the experience from this wild journey just from simply moving off my spot. It's taking me on this entire journey where now I'm connecting my kids with students on the other side of the world. And I'm having these experiences. This teacher who hated group work all of a sudden is doing group work with kids on the other side of the world. And all simply because I moved off my spot. And so as you walk through today and you go through this experience, this is what I want you to think. How can you use this experience today and over the next few days to get off your spot? Because that is really important. So as I see you out there and we can talk, I'm going to be challenging you. I'm going to say, how can you move off your spot? All right? Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
I would like to introduce, from the staff of Montclair State University, Marilyn Davis, who's the director of MSNER, which is the Montclair State Network for Education Renewal. And she's here to lead us in the use of the campus today. Marilyn?
Oh, the beautiful audience. Good morning, NJECC. I'm used to saying NJECC, but it's so nice to see you all here on our campus today. Welcome. On behalf of the Center of Pedagogy, the College of Education and Human Services, welcome to our first-time visitors and our long-time traditional visitors who come to NJECC each year. It is always a pleasure to greet you all. Just prior to beginning the semester, you bring boundless amounts of energy. You get us ready for our new semester, which will start in a week. So welcome to you, and it helps us get ready to start the 2020 season. When I saw the website and the themes of New Rochelle High School and Mr. Stirpe's work, social change through technology, which you will hear more about today, I immediately understood why you selected Anthony Stirpe of New Rochelle High School as your keynote speaker. You're in for a huge treat. I've had some time to talk to him. Several themes of Mr. Stirpe's work and vision resonate with me because of our work in the Center of Pedagogy. We use the tenets of our teacher education program and Portrait of a Teacher to prepare our students. These are tools we use and select to assess our teacher candidates. Phrases such as helping children rediscover a strong desire to learn and a passion for writing exemplify our belief that the educator is one who understands learning and development as complex processes that take place across the lifespan. The focus on social change through technology, giving students the power to share their stories and their voices grounded in writing and literature. It reminds me of our commitment to promote creative thinking, critical consciousness, especially in the areas of respect for equity, justice, and accessibility. And that extends beyond the classroom. Mr. Stirpe's focus on English language arts to democratize the filmmaking process to learn in new and unique ways resonates with our aim in the Center of Pedagogy to create democratic learning communities, that are engaging and caring, respectful, inclusive, and places where students learn through effective shared management of classroom resources and a safe and empathetic environment. Finally, New Rochelle High School and Mr. Stirpe's work and belief in English language arts, every space is an opportunity for learning, clearly reflects our vision of an educator who embraces leadership roles to create collaborative spaces for partnering with school colleagues, families, agencies, and other organizations out in the community to support students' learning and well-being. So I'm switching now to call Mr. Stirpe Anthony. Hi. I do hope that before you leave today, you are able to share with us your work and how we can help prepare new teachers, because it is clear you have much to offer. We just happen to have a few of our students here in the audience, They are teacher candidates who are attending today. Would you please stand? Did you make it with the traffic? Montclair State students? Okay. I'm going to tell. You took the day off. Nevertheless, these students are all preparing to be mathematics, science, and special educators. Several of them are bilingual and they are eager to learn what you have to share. I'm sure they're going to show up at the session. I ask that those of you who see them in the halls, in sessions, at lunch, please encourage them to stay in the profession. They are entering their final semester of residency in collaborative classrooms where they partner with teachers. They're learning how to maximize their talents and abilities with their mentor teachers, and they need our support. Before I take my seat, I want to affirm the great partnership that we have with NJECC, the Center of Pedagogy and the ADP Center, and my office, the Network for Educational Renewal. We all play a significant role in the accomplishments and goals and visions that I shared with you today. And as always, the ability and the privilege to host the monthly meetings, the annual conference, the Digital Learning Institute held every June in collaboration with NJECC is indeed a privilege. Please join me in thanking the NJECC leadership, George Bagdish, and Greg Festa, and the rest of the NJECC team for putting together this amazing conference today. I close with the words of famed educational leader Paulo Freire, who said, "Education does not change the world. Education changes people, and people change the world." I encourage you to change the world for a better future through your students that you educate every day. May you be inspired by the sessions and workshops that you attend over the next couple of days. And most importantly, please use this conference as your launching pad for this new decade in 2020. Welcome.
Well, Marilyn did the introduction for Anthony already. We had dinner last night, and let me say Anthony is very entertaining. So I'm sure I don't have to say anything else, Anthony. We just have to switch computers up here, which will take a second, and we'll be ready to go.